A woman who is
disabled, and it means for me.
launched in the Middle East Peace Initiative. It is the question of Israeli settlements in the Sinai Peninsula.
Mayor Farmer is just using this as a political issue, like, because just a politician. He has no legal probable cause. Probable cause means the belief based on a believable basis with evidence to back it up that a particular person at a particular time is violating some law, and there's a probable cause to search or arrest them. A good, clear example, similar example would be, we know that many people violate their taxes, both federal and state, in Alabama. That wouldn't give the federal government the right to say they had probable cause to go around and randomly search everybody's checkbooks throughout the city and throughout the state. Anybody who's ever been to a football game in Montgomery knows that people drink at football games. They have even little flasks curved to fit inside your pocket. And I've sat at many football games and seen people drink. People get arrested for being rowdy at football games and throw up, you know, when they get too drunk. I think the problem is not that. I think Mayor Farmer just thinks he's latched onto a very popular issue with the public.
Charges that this is a political issue for Emery Farmer as opposed to a real issue for the city of Montgomery.
Well, I find that very amusing with all the brickbats and flack that's come my way as a result of doing what I think was right and proper and upholding the law. It certainly would have been better politics to have let it alone, but I'm going to try to do what's right and try to uphold the law as I see it for the safety and comfort of the majority of the citizens of Montgomery.
Well, there may be some adverse effect on basketball program, you know, recruiting-wise, but we will have a program, and I think we will be up at the top next year. In fact, I feel very optimistic about it. There's not really too much doubt in my mind about that. A lot of people said that it would affect football recruiting. That would give you a general indicator as to how it would affect, you know, recruiting, in my opinion. And this year, I have here the scholarship forms of the athletes that we've recruited in football, and you can take a look at them for yourself. We have the best group of football players right here signed that we've ever signed, the biggest group. In fact, our backs this year are bigger than the linemen were last year that we recruited.
quite a bit of concern about it because it hasn't been in the United States, this particular type flu, since 1957. So our population born since that date would be susceptible, and we could have an outbreak.
How bad was it in 1957?
It's a typical flu. One is about as severe as another. It was not any high mortality or anything like that associated with it.
So this is really not that different than, say, the swine flu that we heard so much about last year, or just the plain influenza. Is it just a different strain, is that correct?
Right, just like the swine flu was just a different strain of flu. It was really not anything in particular, but they do name these. And this one is called N1H1, the flu that's occurring in Hong Kong and Russia.
What are some of the physicians or the state health departments, say, in America doing to gear up in case it does come to the United States?
Well, since our flu program last year, we have pretty good surveillance. In Alabama, we have 13 surveillance areas throughout the state where we monitor absenteeism in the schools, inpatient visits in the hospital. We have a physician, and we have an industry in each of these areas that report to us. This is being done throughout the country. We are watching areas where we have international airports, our port cities, for entry into this country of something like, say, this flu that's happening over in Russia.
Is there a vaccination for this yet?
They are developing a vaccine, is my understanding, the pharmaceutical people, so that if something does occur, there should be some vaccine available.
Is it possible to estimate the probability of this coming to the United States?
Well, Dave, Hong Kong has always been an area that there's quite a bit of travel back and forth to this country from. Normally, when something happens in Hong Kong, we do expect to get some of it.
But is there any reason for people to be alarmed about it at this time?
Absolutely nothing they can do but just sit back, and we'll try to do surveillance and find out what's happening. There's never been a big immunization program for influenza ever, except last year. That was it was the first year and the only year we've ever had anything like that. In most cases, when it came to influenza in past years, it was only recommended for those people who were elderly or chronically ill. But we, as far as public health or any national program, there was never one until the program last year.
Norman, as you know, in the past year, 11 months of the past year, we've had better than 30 robberies of our local convenience stores. We do have a problem developed in by the Detective Division and the Uniform Division to maybe reduce this somewhat. We hope so anyway. We propose to place some stakeouts in these stores at random, not one every night in the same place, and through the use of electronic observation equipment, we will be able to maybe reduce this by having a welcoming committee for some of these robbers that walk in the store.
Could you give us any indication as to what parts of the city you might have this?
It'll be all over the city. There's no certain location. We'll be all over the city with this program. And some places will be electronic equipment. On other places it'll be police officers inside these stores. And at the time the man walks in and announces his intention of robbing that store, we hope to meet him with a police officer there, equipped to the extent that he can stop the robbery.
Do you have any specific title for this program? Are you going to call it anything specific?
No, it's just another operation of the Detective and the Uniform Division, a cooperative effort between the two divisions. There's no title for it, no.
We understand that another city uses this kind of method. I think Atlanta, Georgia uses it.
Atlanta does use some whereby they post a sign in the window saying that this place has visual or electronic observation of the store operation, and with stakeout, and will welcome any robber that might want to come in.
Did any specific robbery prompt the action of the stakeout program, or is it a culmination of all the robberies you've had over the last couple of years?
Well, Norman, it's a culmination of all the robberies we've had over in the past year, but as you know, we had one recently whereby a man walked into one of the convenience stores, robbed the man, and then deliberately shot the man 5 times, walked out the door, decided he might not be dead, walked back in and shot him one more time, just for good measure. That man is in custody, but we know that there are others that are in town that has not been caught, that has been committing some of these robberies, and we hope shortly through this program we'll be able to stop most of this. We know we're not going to ever be able to stop all the crime, but we hope that this will put a large dent in it.
In May of this year, one of our jumpers of the 20th Special Forces Group was injured in a jump, and following that he did die as a result of his injury, and I had a routine investigation conducted to make certain that everything was in order. Colonel Sharp, the battalion commander, also conducted an investigation to satisfy himself.
But then there was a third investigation. Why
Yes,
was that?
in November, the accident occurred in May, and in November, following an anonymous call that stated that there was some unsafe situations during that jump, I reopened the investigation and had another investigation made.
And what were the findings of that investigation?
The findings of that investigation in the main was that there was no negligence on anyone's part, and that the cause of the individual's death was because he took a shortcut in descending himself from a tree in which he had landed and was injured in doing so. Had he followed the proper procedures, the procedures which he had been taught, he would have descended that tree without any injury to himself. Let me say that the Alabama National Guard has been conducting airborne operations for over 18 years. During this period, there have been over 22,000 individual jumps made with never a fatality, and this is a fantastic safety record, probably the best of any airborne unit in the country, because there's so many things that can go wrong and so many ways that a person can have a bad accident and get killed jumping out of an airplane. And when you consider that we had over 22,000 individual jumps without anybody ever getting killed, it's a fantastic record of safety, and a real compliment to the Alabama National Guard and to the 20th Special Forces Group, which is the major command of the Alabama National Guard that conducts the airborne operations.
I left that solely up to the NCAA. I did not want the institution penalized or put on probation for paying for someone who did not participate, during the year in the season. And that was my only question, because there is a statement in the NCAA guide which says that you cannot pay for an athlete unless he is participating, Now, I called Brent Clark and I asked him, and he told me over the phone that it probably would be okay, but that was a probable statement to leave them on scholarship. I wrote him a letter and asked him specifically, if that was the case. Now, when he writes me back and tells me that, yes, they can remain on scholarship without being penalized, without the institution being penalized, fine. If he says no, then we have to drop them off.
The mayor's announcement comes after a week of harsh criticism over the search procedures by the police department at last Thursday's concert. Nearly every ticket holder was searched, and more than 50 persons were arrested for possession of illegal drugs. In response to questions from Councilmember Joe Reed on the possibility of an alternative to the random searching, Farmer said he may make a decision on the matter tomorrow.
We're going to take a strong look tomorrow at the possibility of no longer allowing the hard rock type shows at the Civic Center. We've had instance after instance after instance where people have been over there on one form of drugs, have thrown up all over the place, have fainted where they've had to been carried out. They've just been incident after incident after incident at that type of show, not at any others. This is where we hung our hat on the probable cause at out of the Fourth Amendment, because this particular record had been built over a period of time at each of these rock shows. So I think it is time for us to reanalyze our position on renting to those to that type of entertainment, which we will do very shortly. Probable cause was what we based our theory on. It's the kind of thing I wish had never happened. It's the hard decision that comes with this office to maintain law and order. But it was in direct response to hundreds and hundreds of parents' requests that we do something about what was going on over there.
If Farmer does decide to close the Civic Center to rock concerts, even more criticism is expected to be given, since most persons connected with the center agree that such concerts are the biggest moneymakers for the facility. In a related matter, the Alabama Civil Liberties Union today filed suit in federal court contesting the constitutionality of last week's searches. The suit will be filed in the names of 3 persons who were searched at that concert but weren't arrested. Alabama CLU Executive Director Mary Weidler explains the suit.
We're asking in the suit that the attorneys filed for the Civil Liberties Union that the city's policy of searching random searches at rock concerts and other kinds of concerts and at other public facilities be declared illegal by the court. We're asking for an injunctive relief.
Why do you feel that those searches were illegal?
Why do I feel they were illegal? Because the Fourth Amendment says that without probable cause and without warrants, people just can't be searched like that.
A country music concert is scheduled for this Sunday afternoon at the Civic Center. Mayor Farmer refuses to discuss the possibility of more searches at that concert. This is Dave Rickey, WSFA TV News reporting.
There was some concern that the summer drought would have an adverse effect on this year's duck hunting season. It was feared that some small ponds and lakes where ducks usually stay would be dried up this year. But apparently the Alabama autumn was wet enough to counteract the drought, at least as far as the duck hunter is concerned. No actual data is available yet. The Conservation Department is in the process of gathering that now, but wildlife biologist Wayne Colin says the duck population is actually up a little bit from last year. But the Alabama duck hunter is facing a different kind of bird this season, an older, smarter duck.
We'll probably have more adult, mature birds than we had and less juvenile birds. As you know, your adult birds are not as vulnerable to the gun as your juvenile birds, so it'll probably be a more challenge to the duck hunter in Alabama this year than it was last year, simply because we'll have more adult birds in the bag.
Okay, what advice would you give to the hunter in Alabama then this year?
I'd advise the Alabama hunter to get his decoy set properly and practice up on his calls, because this is what's going to determine whether he gets the ducks into the decoys or not.
A good deal of the credit for maintenance of the duck population goes to the state and federal conservation agencies, but government agencies can't do it all. Private organizations like the state and national wildlife federations make a substantial contribution. Another group is Ducks Unlimited.
Ducks Unlimited was formed in 1937. This is our 40th year this year, and in these 40 years, we've collected $60 million, and 80% of all monies collected during this period have gone to Canada. Now, the reason Ducks Unlimited was organized was to provide funds to send to Canada to provide permanent water habitat where 80% of the ducks are produced. Now, the U.S. Congress cannot appropriate monies and send outside of the continental United States for conservation measures. They can appropriate monies for every other measure, but not conservation. Therefore, Ducks Unlimited was organized in 1937 after the drought of the early 30s. Now, prior to the Dust Bowl days of the early 30s, we had a continental population of waterfowl. that exceeded 340 million total birds. Immediately following this period in 1934 and 35, the population had dwindled to less than 40 million total birds. Therefore, a group of concerned Americans met in Washington, D.C. in 1937 and organized Ducks Unlimited to raise funds in this country to send to Canada to provide permanent nesting habitat for the waterfowl so that the populations would not fluctuate as drastically as they did during the Dust Bowl days of the early 30s.
These conservation efforts are great, but the skeptic will say, hey, you only save those ducks to kill them. But most duck hunters would tell you that's not so.
I really enjoy just viewing waterfowl particularly, or any of your songbirds in the out of doors. Rather than harvesting them, I'd rather see them many times than harvest. But I am a hunter. I have $25 worth of hunting licenses in my pocket, and that indicates something to you. But I think as you grow older, I think that hunter success becomes less important than hunter opportunity.
I and Mr. Cross, who was here earlier, both would have as much enjoyment from just watching ducks as we do actually harvesting ducks. We still continue hunting ducks because they also eat very well, but there's a thrill to seeing them in flight that can't be matched by anything else, and it's a thrill or an enjoyment that if you want to hunt them or you're just interested in conservation, that I would like to see continue for my children and their children and your children and their children to come. And that's why I'm interested in it.
Did you ever have a day when you go out there and sit all day and don't see anything?
I've had days where I sat all day and didn't see anything. I've had days where I froze to death. I've had days where I got soaking wet and froze to death. I think anybody that hunts long enough, and especially ducks, are going to have days like that. More of those than the good days, but it's still all worth it, because if you never fire the first shot, when you see that flight of ducks come in on a cold, crisp morning, it's a thrill that can't be described just by talking about it.
The Alabama duck hunting season continues through January 20th. The best duck hunting spots in the state are the Mobile and Tennessee Valley areas, but the duck hunting should be great all around the state. As mentioned earlier, despite fears raised by the summer drought, the duck population is comparable or even larger than last season's. But this year's Alabama ducks should be older and wiser. We hope the same can be said for the hunter. This is Dan O'Brien reporting for Composite.
The tranquility which existed in the just completed special session of the state legislature is expected to fade away shortly as the lawmakers get down to work in the 1978 regular session, which convened about 6 hours ago. Governor George Wallace will address a joint session of the legislature immediately following the 6 o'clock report. That invitation was made formal earlier today when the House and Senate met briefly around noon and adopted a resolution inviting the governor to speak. That resolution, incidentally, is still in the Senate Rules Committee, so the invitation officially comes only from the House. That oversight is not expected to change the governor's plans, however. At noon, the House added almost 200 bills to the ones that had already been pre-filed for action. The latest count of bills assigned a number stand at 241. When the lower chamber convened, the time was devoted to passing resolutions and accepting bills. It recessed around 1 o'clock to be called back for the joint session for the State of the State address by Governor Wallace. The picture in the Senate was about the same. The senators met for about an hour, adopted resolutions, and accepted bills. There were about 160 bills pre-filed in the Senate, but the same number were filed today for a grand total of 309 measures the Senate will originate. So far, there are more than 550 bills in both houses of the legislature waiting for committee action and possible passage into law. Governor George Wallace will deliver his last State of the State address to the joint session shortly. The The governor is expected again to reveal that the state is in sound financial condition and will present a balanced budget. Some of the issues that are expected to draw the attention relate to the plight of the Alabama farmer. And there are problems with Medicaid, the prisons, and the courts. These are financial woes the lawmakers will be asked to wrestle with and to come up with some type of solution. Wallace does not want any increase in consumer taxes, and will call the legislature to solve financial problems with the funds that are available. Medicaid, involving state and federal money, will require the attention of the legislature. It affects more than 1 million recipients in the state, and no doubt the governor will call for tightening up the program and making it work within the confines of money available without a cutback in services. The state will be building some new prisons, and the governor is expected to touch on a funding formula to provide that money for the Board of Corrections operations and for a building program. The State of the State Address will deal with highway funding and education. Wallace wants the state to receive its fair share of federal highway money and will recommend that steps be taken to assure that these funds are constantly available. Record general fund and education budgets are expected to be submitted tonight. Wallace has taken much credit for the growth in education and is expected to present a glowing picture on education and his plans for schools and colleges. He should address himself to teacher retirement and salaries for other school personnel. And there are reports that the governor will propose a $200 million bond issue for education, affecting all segments of public education. Private colleges and universities are expected to gain the attention of the governor as well. Wallace may seek some sort of relief for property taxes in Alabama, and sources say he's determined that some action be taken in the regular session, and there could be another session of the legislature this year if the lawmakers fail to act. It will come as no surprise if Wallace calls the lawmakers for passage of his utility package to control utility costs, with utility bills apparently the main theme of this session. Wallace can be expected to come down hard on the lawmakers to pass his package this session. Efforts by the governor have been made as far back as 1973 to pass bills relating to utilities. He has chastised the Senate on a number of occasions for its inaction, and he can be expected to do the same tonight. A cold air surrounds the state capitol this evening, but the temperature inside the chambers is expected to reach the boiling point at some time over the next few months. Remember that this is an election year. The lawmakers will have to face the voters while their personal record is still fresh in the minds of the electorate. Many will be seeking higher office, and the governor is not totally turned off on living in Washington, D.C. The governor will address the joint session of the legislature in about 20 minutes. It will be carried live here on WSFA TV. From the state capitol, reporting live, this is George Mitchell.
It was 7 years ago today, in a quiet, private ceremony, that George and Cornelia Wallace were married. 16 months later, an assassination attempt was to leave the governor paralyzed from the waist down. Wallace was later described as an extremely jealous husband who had his wife followed. At one point, Mrs. Wallace had to deny publicly that she was having extramarital affairs. And she says in order to find out who was telling lies about her, she bugged her husband's bedroom telephone. And then there were quarrels over money, and the governor's brother, Gerald, who had long been rumored to have put away large amounts of cash for the governor. Finally, Mrs. Wallace moved out of the mansion, charging the crippled governor treated her violently. The divorce case attracted widespread attention, and the details were expected to be revealed in today's court hearing. Instead, newsmen were given a simple announcement.
We have just been informed that the Wallace divorce case has been settled. The lawyers are filing their papers this afternoon.
Mrs. Wallace received $75,000 in cash and 5 gifts that had been given to the couple, including a color TV set and a microwave oven, money to pay $2,500 of debts, and a lakeside lot. Wallace said he was pleased to avoid the open court hearing.
When people have been married, regardless of how long, it's something really that belongs to them, and I don't think they would like to have it aired before the world.
The out-of-court settlement apparently ends the official court investigation into Wallace's financial affairs and precludes what many believe could have been embarrassing revelations as Wallace prepares to run for the U.S. Senate. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Montgomery, Alabama.
Well, I accepted the recommendations of my attorneys, and the matter's settled, and I, of course, wish her well, because there certainly are no hard feelings. I regret it, of course.
What, do you think there are any ramifications to the divorce and to the investigation or the court inquiry into your financial affairs on your probable upcoming political race?
I cannot judge that. I would think not. They were pretty thoroughly aired.
How do you think the divorce and the publicity that's preceded will affect your future political career?
I cannot say how anything like that will affect it. I'm not worried about that. I was worried about the private, personal relationship between myself and my family, which I regret. And I've said not one disparaging word about my wife, and don't intend to do so. My former wife, and I do not intend to do so.
Governor, did you prefer an out-of-court settlement to going to a possible trial as was scheduled for today?
I think that both of us preferred to settle the matter instead of going through a trial, having all you folks looking in and a private, personal matter, because after all, when people have been married, regardless of how long, it's something really that belongs to them, and I don't think they would like to have it aired before the world, the personal, private matters of a marriage. And for that reason, I think a settlement was in order, since we both would like to settle the matter, and we did it in a friendly manner. I think that's the way it ought to be. And my wife and I, in my judgment, are still friends.
Well, we have a mailing list of about 40 in this situation. What do you think should be in the PR station?
That will be available to be recopied. You would know more.
No use print 100 and figure out you need 1,000. All right.
Well, our lifestyles and our attitudes in the county just need more personal attention than getting on an agenda and waiting through all the business that the mayor, council, form of government has. When we have problems in the county, we need immediate attention, like the wrong kind of slag has been put on our roads. What can we do? We go straight to the phone, call our commissioner. The problem is taken care of. There's never a time that we cannot reach our commissioner immediately or go to the county commission meeting and be heard immediately. Our problems are not even remotely similar to the problems that you have within the city.
The complications of city and county problems seem to grow from time to time, and if we are to continue to grow in the Montgomery area, I feel that we need to consolidate where it will be simple for the future development, both industrial and residential, can be carried forward.
They wouldn't have the money, and I don't know how many years to give the people the service they'd have to pay for, taxation if they consolidate this county. I feel I'm in favor of annexation if the people want it. I think we should go slow.
If our plans go through, they will be given an opportunity to vote. And this, we want to also point out that the people in the rural areas will not be taxed for services they do not receive. It will be done by zones if it is done at all.
We appointed a committee to write the majority report, the report that will be sent to the City Council and the County Commission. And then the other side is going to write a minority report. And of course, when they are received by the governing bodies of the city and county, it'll be up to them to implement the report or reject the report or do whatever they want to with it.
Following that report, does that abolish the committee that you now head?
Well, I think it will be up to the City Commission and City Council and County Commission to abolish it. They appointed it. And of course, we will put the report, send a statement that we've concluded our work and ask them for their what their wishes are.
Do you believe that the annexation issue needs to be cleared up before you can go further in consolidation?
I think absolutely it must, because certainly if annexation does not pass, then consolidation doesn't stand a chance. And I see personally annexation as a step towards consolidation.
The state Senate was the first to conduct business on this, the final day of the special session. In addition to passing the unemployment compensation law, the upper chamber confirmed the nominations of John Vickers of Selma and Willie F. Hamner of Eclectic to the State Board of Corrections. The Senate vote on the UC bill was 33-0. Everett's attack on an agreed-upon amendment was defeated, and the bill was sent back to the House for the signature and then on to the governor for his signature. The Senate also adopted a resolution by Senator Wendell Mitchell of Laverne urging President Carter and Congress to act to help the farmers in their current financial crises. The House received the employment benefit bill at 3:15. House Speaker Joe McCorkadale signed it at 3:19. And then Representative Rick Manley of Demopolis moves the House adjourn sine die. The Senate, meanwhile, found itself in a brief recess prior to adjournment brought on by a disagreement over confirmation of individuals appointed by the governor. The confirmation of Vickers and Hamner to the Board of Corrections were held up till they were reported back to the floor from the Rules Committee. Senator Earl Goodwin of Selma, apparently displeased with the way the Senate handled the two nominations, urged his colleagues to consider confirmations on the merits of the individuals involved. Senator Pat Vaca of Birmingham called on the Senate to establish a uniform method of confirming nominees sent to the upper chamber by the governor. Vaca wants all nominees screened by some means before they are confirmed by the Senate. The lawmakers accomplished what they were called to Montgomery to do. The state now has an unemployment compensation law which meets federal requirements. It saves the state and employers millions of dollars. Both houses convene at noon tomorrow here in Montgomery for the 1978 regular session, which promises to be full of surprises. Governor George Wallace addresses a joint session of the legislature tomorrow evening at 6:30 on the state of the state. From the Senate chamber, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Kentucky controlled the game from the opening tip. Jack Givens, the game's leading scorer, got the first of his 25 points to get the Wildcats started. Mike Phillips followed with a dunk, and Kentucky reeled off 8 more points before Auburn could get on the scoreboard. The top-ranked Wildcats hit all their shots in the first 4 minutes and stretched that lead to 16-2. But Auburn didn't quit. Auburn, with one of the few teams that can at least match up physically with Kentucky, cut the lead to 2 points and looked as if they might make a game of it. But that comeback didn't last long, as the Wildcats went on another hot streak shortly after that. They shot nearly 68% from the field during the entire first half. Truman Claytor did a lot of damage from the outside. Claytor hit 6 straight from long range, and Kentucky took a 16-point lead at halftime. But Auburn still wouldn't give up. The Tigers' Stan Pitcavage hit a long jump shot, cutting Kentucky's lead to 10 with 7.5 minutes to play. But Kentucky came right back with 10 straight points. Rick Roby hit 4 foul shots and a tip-in during that splurge. That put the Wildcats on top by 20 with 5 minutes left to go. From there, they coasted to a 101-77 victory. It was Kentucky's 11th straight win of the season, the Wildcats' 3rd straight in the Southeastern Conference. Dan O'Brien, WSFA TV Sports.
This is one of the things that I would really fault this administration for. The president has made many, many statements on human rights and the concern of this administration for human rights. But when you examine it, you see that we are applying our concern selectively. We are saying we're very concerned about the human rights of Steve Biko and the blacks in South Africa. We don't say how concerned we are over the hundreds of thousands that have been killed in Uganda, for instance. We don't say how concerned we are over the human rights of those who are denied the basic rights in Red China or in Russia. We are warming our relations with Cuba, and there are some 30-odd thousand people, political prisoners there, according to the accounts I read. So, yes, we should be concerned with human rights, but we should be concerned with everybody's rights and not just do it selectively where it's politically expedient.
I can quote our foreign minister on this. He said that he's not prepared to lay down his life for a South Africa